how do we raise our kids to be ready for a future that we can't even imagine yet? NASA did a study that showed that 98% of 5-year-old kids tested at the genius level of creativity. But by adulthood, do you want to guess how many?
I'm going to go with 5%, 10%.
You're close. It's 2%.
2%.
Of adults
Wow.
retain that. We know that creativity doesn't just fall out of us, but it's trained out of us.
She's a visionary entrepreneur and the CEO of Pok Pok, a Time 100 most influential company. With a background in product design at Disney, she is on a mission to redefine screen time and raise the next generation of creative thinkers. Recognized on Inc.'s Female Founders 500 list, we have the incredible Melissa Cash on the show.
There's a huge lack of creativity and imaginative thinking that follows us through life. Pok Pok is really on this mission to help raise that next generation of creative thinkers by tapping into the process, not the product.
Melissa, for those listening, what is it that you do and what problem is it helping solve in the world?
Thank you for asking. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Pok Pok, and our whole mission is to really help raise imagination in the next generation of kids using technology as a creative tool, not, like an addictive dopamine slap in the face. And so our core product now is a multi-award-winning subscription app for young kids that's really inspired by Montessori, that really mimics the kind of play that would happen on the floor of your house. So that could be like playing with arts and crafts or Lego or honestly just like any random stuff that you find. And we try to bring that open-ended, very child-led play into a digital space for kids without the use of levels or points or language. Like there's no right or wrong way to play. And so it gives kids this really great creative opportunity to follow their noses and tinker and just kind of see what happens, just like they might do on your floor. And with that, we're really trying to bring more awareness and also more tooling to families for young children whose brains are undergoing so much growth so quickly. And especially, this is no longer the dawn of AI. Like AI is here in this room with us. And so how do we raise our kids to be ready for a future that we can't even imagine yet? They're going to have jobs that haven't been invented yet. And the skills that we've been teaching them in school is not really tapping into what I believe is the number one sort of crisis, which is there's a huge lack of creativity and imaginative thinking that follows us through life. NASA did a study back in the 60s that showed that 98% of 5-year-old kids tested at the genius level of creativity. But by adulthood,
98%?
Yes, it's almost 100% of 5-year-olds are creative geniuses. But by adulthood, do you want to guess how many?
I'm going to go with maybe 5%, 10%.
You're close. It's 2%,
2%
of adults
wow.
retain that. And so we know that creativity doesn't just fall out of us, but it's trained out of us through, the way that we've constructed our society, the way our education systems are built, and really what we value, which is the product, not the process. And so Pok Pok is really on this mission to help raise that next generation of creative thinkers by tapping into the process, not the product.
I wonder whenever somebody now says as an adult, oh, I'm not a creative person. Well, that study would show that that's not actually true. It's just that it's been
exactly
beaten out of you over the time, right?
Absolutely. I think most of us think if I gave you a piece of paper and was like, can you draw a plant? You'd be like, maybe you'd be like, oh, I don't know. I'm not a great artist or I'm not that creative. And that's very much a normal response as an adult. But it's actually just heartbreaking because we all have that in us. But there's a fear. Like when you go to school, they start teaching you that you have to get things right, that you have to pass the tests, that you have to memorize and then regurgitate information. And if you don't do that well, there's this fear of failure. And I do think, don't get me wrong, I think it's really important that kids learn how to fail and learn how to be resilient. And they need to go through that process, but we need friction. And when that fear is baked into us, it's so much harder to be creative because we're all very focused on the end result. But if you went to solve, whatever your biggest problem is right now with the company or with your life, instead of trying to think of the most logical way or the most affordable way or the easiest way, we all like to take the path of least resistance. I love to think what would a 5-year-old do? Because it just helps me open up that creative thinking mechanism in my brain that I think has been kind of like quietly nudged aside over the years. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say that I'm the most creative person. And I don't think I live in the 2%, honestly. But that's why I feel so strongly that we have to help make sure that that number grows
Yeah.
and that we're setting kids up for a life where, the skills that we're teaching them in school, I just don't think are quite exactly what they're going to need in the future. And nobody really knows what they're going to need. And so, but I do believe that like if we can think creatively and think
Mm.
for ourselves, then it'll really open up opportunity for kids.
One of the ways I think about what we need and are going to need in the future is, okay, there's going to be time-based skills and then there's timeless skills. The time-based skills is, in the age of AI right now where things are changing so fast. Okay, I've got to learn, I've got to grow, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And there's certain skill sets for certain jobs that you go into, right? So that's time-based. It's specific time frame that's required for that specific skill set. And with the rate of change, that is changing rapidly. And so then we have this timeless skill set, things like curiosity, creativity, imagination, our ability to be able to bounce back, our ability to be resilient, our ability to build mental toughness, our ability to communicate, to be able to converse with one another, to be able to look somebody else in the eye and have a conversation with somebody that you disagree with. Like these kinds of things they're timeless. They're never going to go away. In fact, they're becoming even more important because as change continues to grow, it becomes even more vital that we're able to continue to adapt. And some of these skill sets that you're referring to are incredibly important. And to me, again, are a timeless nature. Like you are going to utilize them for the rest of your life.
100%.
Whatever comes up. A question I've got then for those who don't know, what is Montessori and why is the app inspired by that?
It's a great question. So I would say like Pok Pok's very much inspired by it. We are not like a hardcore Montessori app, but one of my favorite key tenets of Montessori is the way that it prioritizes the child. And so it could be something very subtle, like when you go into somebody's home who has children, are the toys within reach, for example, or are they all tucked away, or are they all on a high shelf that like a young child wouldn't be able to get to? One of my favorite Montessori principles is really grounded in that ability for like access to things. And so if your child wants to go explore and play, that they have that opportunity. And honestly, as a parent, sometimes I'm like, oh, the mess, but like screw the mess. I think that there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah.
But it's really about child-led experiences. And so what we have taken out of that and built into Pok Pok is this idea that everything that happens is intrinsically motivating from the child's perspective. So nothing like happens at you. I think a lot of children's media is coming at you from all sides. It's either like very like bright and loud and overstimulating. And I'm not saying that that's bad. And if you're a parent who lets your child, interact with those kinds of things, there's nothing to feel guilty about. I am not here. Like parents have enough to feel guilty about. Please don't feel guilty about that. But it's about thinking about ways to let the child follow their own path instead of coming at them. And I think a lot of especially digital play or app experiences are very either focused on hardcore rote learning, which is that let's give you information, have you memorize it, and then practice it over and over again. Like picture like the worksheets we probably both did in school. And that does work to an extent to teach you knowledge, but it's very hard to retain information that way. And it's actually not what young kids need. Young kids need to play. And I really believe that the future depends on how kids are playing right now. And we need to bake more play into the world and into our own lives. And I think that there's this really unique opportunity to take a step back right now as technology is like weighing down, I think, on a lot of us. And there's this AI, either you're like terrified of it or you're obsessed with it. It's a very polarizing conversation at the moment. But I think that when it comes to kids, they just really need time and space, time to be bored, time to follow their nose and play. They need independence. They need to be able to know that you trust them. And so if you're out on a hike with your kids and you maybe just like let them go a little further ahead and you've got an eye on them. I think independence needs support. Like my daughter, she's one, she likes to sit in boxes. we get packages from time to time, maybe not daily, just kidding, every day. And she loves to sit in a box, but she's only one. So she's always getting stuck. And my job as her mom is not to go pick her up and get her out of the box. My job is to watch her. And she needs that friction. She has to learn how to get out. Obviously, if there's like a dangerous moment, I'll intervene, but risky play is such an important part of how kids learn resilience and how they learn how to grow their independence and not be afraid. Because as soon as you come swooping and you're like, oh my God, be careful, then they become scared too. And I mean, honestly, truthfully, like I'm literally on FaceTime with my family last night and my daughter's climbing a kitchen chair and I'm screaming at my husband who's like off camera. I'm like, get her, she's gonna. So like there are moments where like it's hard to do that. But I think in general, those are all principles that I feel we've tried to bake deeply into the experience as much as we possibly can, knowing that like we try not to put anything into the app that feels like it's just better in real life. So if we can't make it more interesting digitally, then we won't touch it. So we do a lot of like translating physical toys into the digital world, but some of them just don't work.
Well, I'd love to talk more about the app in a moment. The thing that you just mentioned there is really interesting, though. Before we jump in there, is that okay? If a parent swoops in, it's maybe creating. There's two things that are happening there. One is that you're instilling the fear in a way that this is wrong, or this is bad, or this is unsafe. This is not good, right? And so that can get trained in about that. But it's also that second part is you're not allowing them to fail, right? And that's where we learn.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure everybody listening to this, like some of the biggest lessons that we have come through the challenging moments that we experienced, where we didn't get it right, because it's through the not getting it right we realize, oh, that was the wrong path, that was painful, that was heartbreaking, that was insert the challenge that we had here, and now I've got to think through, okay, how do I, if I still want that outcome, if I want love, for example, or I want a successful business, or I want to save money, whatever the thing is, that there has to be new ways of thinking to be able to solve the specific problem at hand. And if we're not teaching that, if we're not building that in, then not only are we instilling the fear, but we're removing the ability for them to actually learn through their mistakes.
Totally. Friction is where growth happens.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And I think that what we need to be mindful of, especially right now, is just how much friction are we building into our children's lives? And even as adults, honestly, frankly, I think there's so much, especially with the way that a lot of us use AI, sometimes it can become a crutch that removes the friction of thinking. And like MIT just did a study on this. It hasn't been peer reviewed yet, but it was really touching on the fact that the use of ChatGPT is affecting the cognitive process of our brains, because a lot of us are just turning to these LLMs for support in thinking rather than perhaps using them as tools. I've personally fallen into that trap already and had to like really pull myself out of it, because I was like, oh damn, like I am not thinking for myself right now. There are ways to use these tools, I think, for the greater good. And I'm definitely not anti-AI in any sense of the word, but I think that friction is so important. And I mean, as a mom, I just want to kind of hone in on this, because I think people listening might also think that it's unrealistic, and I can agree, like sometimes it is like there's a very fine line between like my kid's in real danger and like, let's give them a little friction, So I just want to say, like, I'm not advocating to, let your child get like really, really injured or something. But I think that when we can leave a little bit of space for that, it's quite interesting. Like my mom actually always tells the story about how when I was really little, probably like 1 or 2, I was at the top of the stairs in the house and I couldn't really talk much, but I said, jump. And my mom was at the bottom of the stairs and she was like, all right, jump. And she kind of like dared me. And I was like, I guess I don't remember this, but she said I like was thinking about like, am I really going to jump down all of these stairs right now? And then I didn't do it. But my mom was like, she said that she's like, I was ready to leap up and catch you. And I knew that the worst thing that would happen is probably like a bad bruise. But she's like, I needed to show you in that moment that like you couldn't manipulate me. I think that I was doing it as a little kid to kind of like test the boundaries, which was exactly my job to do. Mm-hmm. That's what kids are made for. They're testing the boundaries all the time. And then how do you support them in that without them going maybe too far. And so I think that story always just stuck with me because when it comes to my own kids, I'm definitely more of the like, my instinct is I'm like the be careful mom. Like my
Yeah.
son is like wild and I love him for it. But like sometimes I'm like white knuckling, just trying to not freak out. But I think that like every time I give him that space,
Yeah.
he never surprises me. He always is able to get out of the situation safely. And like I'm sure there'll be a moment where that's not true, but the times that I do end up leaping up, I always feel like, oh, did I jump in too soon?
Too soon,
And
yeah.
I no, again, there's no real right or wrong here, but I just think like it's something that we all have to be mindful of. And it's the same with adults too. It's like if you're working with colleagues and you give them a big task or it's a thing that they've never done before and they're like, well, I don't really know how to do this. Like, are you sure that I should handle this? Like, yeah, I'm sure. Fail. Let's see what happens. And
Yeah.
I think baking that into the way we run our companies is really important too, because if you create a culture that where failure is not acceptable, then you'll never get anywhere, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I think you really need to have a space where people feel like, yeah, they can fail. That's fine. Like it's the process that really helps companies grow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a company standpoint, if you've got a value around innovation, but you're not encouraging mistakes, like
Oh yeah,
they are polar opposite. It's polar opposites. Then, like innovation and creativity, mistakes must be baked into it. You
totally.
must. There is no other way for that to occur. And yeah, I think the other piece with that is that if you are making it wrong to make mistakes at work, then you're stifling creativity, you're stifling innovation. You're also gonna, if you're a leader or owner of a company, you're gonna become the bottleneck very, very quickly as well, right?
Totally. Yeah, and people aren't going to want to share their real ideas with you because of the fear. And that's why I don't know. I just think this is a very important tenet to think about as leaders because I've worked in cultures where that is not the case. I've worked for very big companies that claim to be very imagination driven, but then when it comes down to like operating in the day to day, it's like no, this is the path, and you
Yeah.
just follow it. And if you have an idea, that's great as long as it fits within the confines of the path,
Mm.
And I think there are companies that are not there to innovate, but they're there to execute. But I think you have to just know which one you are because and but I mean actually I've never really met a company that's not there to innovate or change something. I mean,
And I think as time goes on, if you are not in
you're
that
dead in the
camp,
water. Yeah.
you're out of business. It's gonna happen pretty quick. At some stage, if it's not right now, which probably it is already now, but if it's not right now, disruption is coming for your industry, and it's coming
Totally.
multiple occasions
And
over
it's
and
fast.
over and over again. Like there's just wave after wave. It's a full set that's coming. It's not just one wave, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I wonder. So, do you with your son, daughter?
Both.
Both, okay, son and daughter.
Got two of them.
So two kids. How old are they? So you said 1 year old
So
and
Phoebe, my daughter, is 1, and my son Oliver is almost 4.
okay, great. So 1 and 4. Are there moments when they do take that risk, for example, and maybe it either does work out, doesn't work out? Are there teachable moments that you're building into that? And then did your mum in that moment where you were going to go down the stairs but then didn't? Does she remember? Was there a moment where she actually taught out the back end of that? Because there's lessons there, right?
Yeah.
That we can impart the wisdom that might not have actually been obtained by the person because they avoided something, or when they did it, then maybe they could have developed a limiting belief or a limiting pattern of behavior as a result of something occurring, which often occurs. Usually, like when I've worked with clients on the coaching capacity, almost every time, I don't care if someone's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, we're getting back to somewhere in that 3 to 7 year range usually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 8 to 10, 12, something like that. But usually there's something that's happened back there that formed a belief that has held them back for decades.
Yeah.
Which is wild in itself.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
So,
yeah, to answer your question, so the one with the stairs with my mom, the way that she tells it, I mean, I obviously have no recollection of this,
Sure.
but like the way she always told the story was like the look in her eyes and the look in my eyes kind of said it all. She's like, I was daring her. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm going to jump down these stairs. And she's like, go ahead. Let's see what happens. But I knew it was dangerous. Like I knew that I didn't want to actually do it.
right.
I think, and so she, and also at that very young age, I think those teachable moments come in the form of action. And it can be very difficult. Like I can say to my 1-year-old, like, okay, so the reason that I wanted to actually hold you, like, it's not going to land.
Yeah,
But I think
sure.
what does land is the look in your eye, the body language, the sound of your voice while you're talking. Those subtleties, I think, really build clarity and trust around those moments. So my mom was saying, she's like, I literally had to say nothing. I just looked at you and was like, go ahead. And that was it. And then I decided not to jump. And then my mom like kind of like giggled up the stairs and took my hand and we walked down. And she's like, and that was enough. She's like, you never tried it again.
Yeah.
She didn't punish, like she wasn't coming at me from a negative standpoint.
Yeah.
She was just being like, yeah, go, experiment. That's what child is about. And she knew that if I did, like cross the line and dare to jump, that she would jump up and catch me. But but I think what she did so well there was let me do that. Like as a mom now, like if my daughter Phoebe was like, jump, I don't know if I could do that. Like I mean, I would now because I know my mom successfully did it. I would like just hope that it would work out. But that scares me, honestly. And so when it comes to my own kids now, with my son, we can talk about it totally.
Yeah.
And usually I will ask open-ended questions or I'll just think out loud. I think thinking out loud is like one of the most underestimated tools of our time. So, or like any time, but this is my hot take. Like if I just think out loud in front of him, kids are so malleable and like, this sounds negative, but I mean it in a positive way, but like they're easier to manipulate.
Yep.
So if let's say, I'm trying to think of like a real story. Okay. My son punched me in the stomach maybe like 2 months ago and, and he was mad at me and he just like came and he just like literally sucker punched me. And it was hard enough that I was like, like, ow. And so my reaction there was really important. And so I was like, ouch. And I didn't even talk to him. I was just like, ouch, that really hurt. My stomach hurts. And then I was like, you know what? I just need a moment to myself. I need to calm down after that. And I just walked away and he followed me. And I was just like going through all of my emotions, but out loud for him. So I was like, I'm really sad that Oliver punched me because I love him and I was just trying to talk to him. And now I feel really sad about that. And you know what? I think I'm going to just lie down and maybe read my book for a few minutes. And like, this was one of my more prouder moments. I've also been the kind of mom who like, someone will bite me. Kids bite all the time. My daughter will bite me and I'm like, but that was one of my more proud moments. Cause as I was going through that process, I didn't scold him. I didn't yell at him. I just was sharing my own feelings to myself, truly not even looking at him. And then he came in and was like, I'm sorry.
Wow.
He's like, I'm sorry I made you sad. And I was like, oh, that's okay. I'm like, I wonder what we might have done differently next time. I'm like, it's okay to be mad. It's always okay to be mad. But I'm like, is it okay to hit people? And he's like, no. So those are I think thinking out loud through those situations can be really helpful because it lets kids connect the dots on their own. And maybe if that situation had occurred and I'd done the same thing, he could have come back and hit me again. Like any kid, you never know what's going to happen. But I think that patterns over time is what matters more than those one-offs. And so that's that's a tool that I really love. And then the other one is it's just asking open-ended questions. So for example, like if he's stuck, he's learning how to like write letters right now. And sometimes he gets really frustrated. He's like, I can't do it. He just like, he's having a melt, he's upset, he's crying. And then I'll ask him questions like, what is, what does a pea look like? Or, I mean, it's not so open-ended, but that one, and then I'll guide and be like, oh, I wonder what it would be like if we like try to make a pea with our bodies. And like, I try to like go down the path of play. And then when we are actually playing, those open-ended questions are really valuable. And I think, those things start to help build resilience because you're letting the kid lead the way. You're just giving them like a little bit of scaffolding, a little bit of support. And again, I always feel like it's necessary to caveat this all with like, I'm also like, we all make, I don't even want to call them mistakes, but we're not our best selves all the time. And I think in parenting, it's very normal and healthy actually to go down the quote unquote wrong path because it's another moment for us to go back to our kids and explain and say like, if I yelled at my kids, I can, and I don't feel good about it. I don't feel like I owe them an apology. But I do feel like I want to explain sometimes why.
An explanation.
Because just to come in and say like, hey, like I was yelling at you earlier because I felt really frustrated. And next time, instead of yelling, I'm going to try to take a deep breath. But
Mm,
like, also sometimes we yell at our kids, and I don't see that. I don't think that's a problem. I
mm,
think like there's like definitely there's like a generational thing here where like some generations are like very gentle and like, but I don't know. I think like kids need to see the raw form of you. And that all comes
yeah.
back to that vulnerability and friction. And like, if there is no perfect, obviously, but the more friction and imperfections that I think we can bring into the day to day actually give us so many opportunities to show our kids that we also had to learn how to be resilient, and we also have to think a little bit differently sometimes. And
Mm.
so, yeah, none of this is very black and white.
Yeah. I think that's what's beautiful about it is that there's so much wisdom just in what you just shared. Seriously. There's first and foremost, it is showing and being an example of vulnerability, of not getting it right, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's first and foremost. You're demonstrating them characteristics that you're aiming for them to embody in the future, because that can get really challenging later in life. And so that's an example first up. The second is that the example of being able to write the P, right, and maybe getting really frustrated with that. What's happening there from a behavioral standpoint is I need to get this right. I'm getting it wrong. And there's a need for certainty in that moment. There is a need for doing it the right way. And that is in direct contradiction and in the opposite direction to where creativity and imagination and exploration actually lives.
Yeah.
Needing to know, there's a time and a place for needing to know.
Totally.
There's where clarity of direction comes in and having conviction about where it is that you're going, and so many other examples. And there's a time and a place for exploration and play and curiosity.
Yeah.
And if we're not getting the answer from a specific way that we're doing something, then helping to guide, in this case, helping to guide them to more of exploration, more of play, more of curiosity. Hey, let's maybe, see how we can do it with our bodies. Right? And all of a sudden you're opening them up to the other possibilities that are there to get the answer, which is beautiful. And so that continual guiding when the time is needed to go from needing to know to I don't know and let's find out. Oh, I wonder what it might be.
Yeah.
That's going on there. The third one that I noticed, and I had this moment a number of years ago, about 12 years ago. I've shared this on the podcast before, but there was one of the songs that I released was this song about bullying and suicide. And it ended up reaching a lot of people around the world. It was heard by, kids in 195 countries and used in school projects and dance projects and film projects for them to help tell their story about the experience they were going through. And there's many, many comments online, underneath this song over on YouTube. And most of them are, kids sharing their story and share messages of support. But every now and then there'd be a troll that would come through and say something really, really nasty, really nasty. And I remember years ago looking that up and going, why is it that somebody will and is willing to say something like that when in the overwhelming majority of cases would never even contemplate saying that to somebody's face,
Oh yeah.
right? And I looked it up, and one of the main reasons is because I don't get, if I was to do that, if I was to say a really nasty comment, I don't have the ability or moment where I see your response. I don't see the reaction. I don't see how I hurt you. And as a result, I'm once removed from it,
Yeah.
which increases the likelihood that I will do it again because I don't experience the consequence. And so what I love about you talking out loud there and, thinking out loud as you termed it is that, yeah, he was able to witness in real time the impact that it had on somebody that he loves, somebody that he cares about. And as a result was able to feel what that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, naturally led to him actually saying sorry without you even having to do that.
Yeah.
And that's raising I would say, a very considerate, a very emotionally intelligent person over
I
the
hope
long
so.
term. Yeah, there's many other pieces involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
But it's one small component to
It's
that.
true.
It's one beautiful small component that you're helping to establish and help them to understand and read the room.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we forget is that young kids are like they just arrived on earth. Like
Yeah.
there's so much they still have to figure out, and they're constantly mapping out cause and effect reactions like you were saying. I think that's a really great point. And when the reaction is repeated over and over again, that
Mm.
just becomes how it is.
Yep.
It's where we form our biases and assumptions about how the world works. And when you repeatedly, if you're in a daycare, you hit a kid, they hit you back, that's just all that's going on. A teacher comes, they break it up. This is like the classic loop. It's like so and so hit so and so, they hit the da, 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 and like, and then there's no, and someone comes in and just says hitting is not okay. And you're like, they're probably like, okay, but like everyone's doing it. And if I hit someone, what's going to happen is that someone else is just going to come in and break us up. And so that's the thing. And like I can't blame teachers because this is the hardest job in the world, the most undervalued, underpaid, et cetera. So I don't fault them for that. But I think that, and it's the same in our private life. If we're doing like a play date and the kids are like fighting or something, it's very normal to just break that up because those kids don't have the tools yet to say, hey, ouch, that hurt,
Yeah.
that hurt my arm, but that also really just like hurt my heart. And like, I'm sad. Why did you hit me? And they just hit each other back because they're 3 or 4 or 5 and they're developing their ability to even identify and share their emotions. So I think the best gift we can give them is showing how it's done.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most adults are not great at that. I think like many of us we're struggling with that too. We have our own baggage. Like you were saying, like as you grow up, all of those things from your childhood kind of like trickle back in as little reminders of where maybe things might not have been perfect or maybe they were wonderful. But I think having kids has been the biggest eye opener of my life for that reason. It's made me realize like, wow, I need to get my own understanding of the world in check because my kids are going to ask me why 2 million times a day. And I don't always have the answer. And I'm realizing now I need to know why some things are really not, why isn't hitting okay? Like seriously, why isn't hitting okay? You're pissed? Like I'll hit you. That sounds awesome. But also like maybe not. So I think there's like a really interesting learning there where which I'm grateful for. I think it was one of the biggest gifts becoming a mother gave me was that awareness of like, okay, I need to now do some work on myself to deeply understand how I feel in these situations, to learn how to communicate that openly to my own kids and to foster that environment in our house where we can really talk openly about how we feel. And then also to be able to answer those questions like, well, why did crocodiles live during prehistoric times, but they're not dinosaurs? Like, I mean, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Right. Well, this is where on the emotional side and the behavioral side, I'm a massive believer why emotional intelligence or whatever we want to call it, life skills, these things that we're talking about should be a compulsory subject in schools.
Totally.
It's by far the biggest learnings that I've had have come after school. Yes, there was some great things that I learned in there, but it was from mid-20s onward when I immersed myself and, embarked on the training that I went through in the work that I do now. That was just what? I had no idea about any of this stuff because it was never taught.
Yeah.
It was never taught in schools. And so that's just one major part of it. And if it wasn't taught in schools, this is where each person's responsibility comes in as a parent and as an adult to learn about this. And yes, to learn why the crocodile situation occurs. I don't know the answer to that.
Honestly, I need to work. I need to look that up. I keep meaning to. But I think you're right. And it comes into the workplace. It comes into every aspect of our relationships as adults. And it's funny, we just did some work with our leadership team at Pok Pok on like values and our zone of genius and things like that. And I think what was really cool is like, these are really high achieving adults who are super high functioning in society, like, what I would call quote unquote normal people, although I don't really believe in like the normal thing, but they were all like, oh, like I've never really actually thought about this. And I learned things about people I've worked with for years because those values could be like traced all the way back to things that happened to them early on in life, and having that added awareness of what makes them hold those belief systems made it so much easier for me to work with them and understand them and celebrate not only our differences, but also knowing why like one person might always do that one thing in a meeting, which I kind of find annoying, but actually I'm like, oh, that's I should not be annoyed by that. This is their thing. This is what makes them them. And like I think that we kind of lose that, or like there's this disconnect. I would love like schools and workplaces to have onboardings, and like the first weeks of school, it should just be like, who are you? And like
Yeah.
when you go to university or college, it's also kind of like just like the grind, and there's no connection. You're just expected to like get in a room with all these people and get along and do great work. But it's been a very eye-opening experience for me. And it's something that it's on my to-do list right now, is to like restructure how we bring people into our company.
Yeah.
I think we have a really great culture and we've worked really hard for that. And we have a wonderful onboarding, and like feedback's been good, but I think we can go so much deeper and learn. Like I don't expect people to like open their life's stories to
Right.
us, because I know like some people really want to keep the work and life separate, or some things just private, which is totally fine. But the more vulnerable that we get as leaders, the more vulnerable our team will become. And I think that breeds more psychological safety for things like creative experimentation,
Mm.
innovation, failing, all of those things. Because when you know the person behind the idea, it really helps shape our understanding of it, and add context that I think is often missing in
Yeah.
the quote unquote boardroom.
Yeah, yeah, and there's high level ways that you can go about that as well, like, without having to go too detailed. Like you said, someone might not be willing to open up. So first week on the job is
Totally,
like,
yeah.
tell me about your childhood, right?
Yeah.
Like interrogation with a
I'm like,
light. But there can be like within the keynotes, at the Edge of Possible keynote, one of the questions that I ask, and we have like a live poll come up, is who are you when you're at your best? And what's one word that you'd use to describe when you're on?
Yeah.
And now there's only a high level that we go through there, but the deeper that you can go down is go, when did you develop that?
Mm.
And what was it about that is so important to you? And
Yeah.
and then you can go on the opposite side of that. Who are you when you're at your worst? Like, what are some of the things that you wish you could improve upon? And then how can we show up? How can we support you as a company when you're in those situations and experiencing those challenging moments? Because then it shows and it demonstrates that you're, again, if there was like almost the interrogation to begin with, it almost feels self-interest. It's like, tell me all your secrets so we can understand how we can get the best out of you, because we want that for the organization.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Versus it being, I want to understand
Yeah.
who you are, because I want to understand how we can help you grow and
Yeah.
become a greatest version of yourself. That's what we want to allow you to flourish in this organization. And it naturally, as a byproduct, is going to lead to higher performance for the organization overall.
True. And it's just more fun. Like, I don't know, we spend so much time of our lives working. It's got to be fun. And that's why, too, I think it also, the buck kind of starts and stops with us, though. I think as founders or leaders or people managing others, like if you're not willing to share those things about yourself, then you can't expect anyone else to do the same. And I think I like the way that you've been thinking about approaching it. I think I also like to think about it as like you're dating. I mean, in the interview process, my first question, I don't care at all about your work. 'Cause like I've seen that on your resume. Just like tell me who you are. What was the last trip you went on? What's a cool, I don't know. I like to really like dive deep into those things first, because I want to get an idea of who you are as a person, because you can always find someone who can check off the things on the list, but like who's gonna be fun? Who am I gonna want to like have dinner with after work, or not be like, oh God, I have to hang out with that person. Like those things just make such a difference. And I think the more connected we can be as humans, the more creative we can be, because that, again, it's the safety that comes in. I think it's like very, even as leaders, sometimes I have felt unsafe sharing or doing something very out of the box, very creative, because of the fear of judgment. And as a founder, everyone always jokes about this, like founders have to be delusional a little bit, because like you're already taking a bold move, but like you want to toe that line of being like, I'm a little delusional and I'm like kind of crazy, but also realistic and like a strong foundational leader. And so sometimes for me, I've been like, well, like, where's that line? And I don't want to lose the respect of my team if I go too far in one direction. But I think that without modeling that, first of all, it's fun for me. I love that. My risk tolerance is like also maybe different than other people in my companies. But I love this idea of like pushing that boundary a little bit and seeing like how far can I take it without me feeling self-conscious. And maybe that self-consciousness is actually a great thing because again, it comes back to modeling and showing others so that like when you have those moments where, we want to come to the table with a brainstorm. And when I say, guys, like anything goes today, just shoot. I really want to mean that.
Mm.
And I think if we come into those meetings, we're like, we're going to brainstorm. Anything goes, guys. But everyone knows like, okay, not everything actually goes
Right.
because like, this is, these are the real like secret parameters of the thing. And so, yeah, it's just all stuff to be aware of, I think, in terms of how we raise kids to think and where their ideas are welcome or not welcome. And yeah, it's just like, it's important.
Mm. One of the last questions I've got then within that environment from a work environment
Yeah.
is, okay, the modeling of it is that you gave an example there. So by the sounds of it, you're modeling like within, okay, anything goes as the example, then any idea that comes up, there's no kind of response or anything like that. It's like, okay, what else we got?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other examples that you have for modeling that risk, if you will, and towing the line, if you will?
Yeah.
And then are there also any ways that you are already doing it or thinking about when it comes to onboarding and how you're going to do things differently through the exercise that you've done about getting to know the team?
Yeah. So on the risk thing, I think when I started the company, I was a lot more, I don't want to say scared, but I was more timid about taking bold risks because we're venture backed. So I was like, okay,
Right.
I want to take enough risk to innovate, but I don't want to take too much risk where I'm going to disappoint all of our investors and this company's going to fail. So there's like, that line is not, it's an impossible one to toe. Like, I feel like I'm always on a tightrope trying to figure out like exactly how much risk to bake in. But then over the years, I realized, I don't know if I can swear on this. I won't
Of course
say.
you can.
I was like,
yeah.
fuck this. Okay, good. I was gonna say I was like, okay, fuck that. I'm just gonna do what feels right to me.
Right.
And so there are so many moments where I'm like, I would rather move very fast and make the wrong decision than spend 3 months thinking about it to maybe make the right decision, maybe not. But I think often we have a gut feeling, even if it's like a very light one, or it's not even quite a gut feeling, but it's almost a gut feeling. My new like mantra about it is like, well, let's just try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll just do something different. So just as an example, we recently hired a new VP of operations who's fantastic. And he was like, what if we change the entire way that we run the company? I don't know if you've heard of EOS, but
Yep.
like the entrepreneurial operating system.
Yeah.
So we don't use it. But he's like, what if we were to use that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really know much about it. Let me like talk to some founder friends. Let me read a bit about it. And he's like, I'm going to get you some resources. I'm like, okay, great. So 2-3 days later, we have another meeting. I come prepared. I've talked to a bunch of friends who have companies. I've read a bit about it online. I'm almost ready to make a decision. And he's like, okay, so I ordered you a book. It's going to be here in a couple of days. Once you finish the book, we can discuss it. And I'm like, oh, like I'm pretty sure I already have my answer. And he's like, what? I'm like, well, honestly, I'm like 80% of me says like, this sounds pretty good. So let's give it a whirl. And if it's not working, we'll just stop doing it. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, are you sure? Like, that's really fast. And I think that for me, again, I don't want to we don't have time to spend 3 months like discussing this and thinking about it and making pro con lists and talking to a million people for advice. Like at the end of the day, obviously it's like a bold move to change the way you run the company. But like, I think that for me, it's more of if we don't move fast on this, we're the suck of time is going to just make this one quick thing into a project. And like, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is like, you give someone a small task and they turn it into a whole project.
Yeah.
And when it's really meant to be a small task. And this might be one of those things I'm underestimating. Maybe it's way more work than I think. Maybe it's not going to work for us. Maybe, but I actually don't really care because my time right now has to be focused elsewhere. So all I can do is like trust the people that I've hired. And if they think it's the right move, then let's try it. And if it doesn't work, they're not fired. We'll just be like, okay, well, we learned that. Now let's do something else. And what was your other question? Can you remind me?
Just before we go on, that's the other question, touching on that.
Yeah.
When it comes to thinking through from a decision-making standpoint, one of the things that I find really useful is, okay, well, let's use EOS as an example. Okay, what's the outcome that we're aiming to achieve? Like, if you can have that conversation with the VP of operations, which it sounds like you've probably done all of this stuff. I find the structure around this of, okay, well, what's the outcome? We want a more effective organization. We want to streamline processes, all that. Insert.
Totally.
Okay, based on that, what's the criteria that we need to have in place in order for that to be outcome to be successful?
Yeah.
And then based on that, then we can play on what I see as like a bridge of curiosity, which is, okay, what could we do that would enable us to do that?
Yeah.
They go, oh, look at this system. Oh, look at this system. Oh, what about this? What about this?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, because you've done the work of, oh, we know what the outcome is that we're aiming to achieve. We know where we are. We know what the criteria is that's needed. And then it go, oh, well, this seems like it's worth at least testing out to see whether it could be a good fit or not.
Totally.
And then all of a sudden, the decision can be made really quickly when you have clear criteria, clarity of outcome, and then you play in the bridge, on that bridge of curiosity for a period of time where you can then just drive down and go, yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
If you know where you're going, it's so much easier to get there. Everyone write that down. I'm just joking.
I love it. The second question, the onboarding process.
Oh, yes. That's a great question. Honestly, I'm still figuring it out, but I think we're hiring a couple of roles right now. So I'm going to do some tests. That's sort of my answer to everything is like, well, we'll onboard all those 3 people, like maybe slightly differently and tell them.
What did you do in the values piece then when you were going through from a cultural standpoint that has you think about, okay, maybe we build some of that into the onboarding? And
yeah, great question. So what changed for me was realizing that like I thought I knew everyone really well, especially people who I've been working with for 4 or 5 years. And then to learn something new about them was just like a cold bucket, not a bucket, like a spray of ocean water on my face. Like it was so nice.
What was some examples of what you learned about someone that you'd known for years, but then all of a sudden knew deeper at a deeper level?
I learned something about one of my co-founders that was pretty profound in the way that he likes to think. So he's quite an introverted person. And he's truly what I would call in the 2% of creative genius. Right. And that is his secret sauce. And I learned more about, I don't want to go like too personal because it's not my place to do that. But what I learned about him was that the things that he needs to be creative and do his best work in that zone of genius requires us to make adjustments in the way that we run certain parts of the company. And that for me was exciting. I was like, wow, we can of course, it's the most micro adjustments and nobody else had a problem with that. But it was so eye-opening. I was like, oh my gosh, for years we've been doing it this way. Can we just do a micro adjustment? And I'll give a small example. I don't think it's too personal. Well, and he's not the only person on our team who's like this. So I'm a person who thinks out loud. I think by talking.
Yep.
Other people think by thinking quietly to themselves. He is definitely one of those people who needs time to think. So when we're in a call, like a leadership meeting, and we have to make a decision at the end of the call, it is pretty much impossible for him to do that well because he needs to gather all the information, which happens live on the call. And then by the end of the call, I'm like, okay, I know what we should do. But he's like, I need to go think about this for 2 days and then I can come back with an answer. And so now we've changed structure. So we're prepping, we're doing all of the conversation. We're doing a lot more prep before big decision-making meetings. Yeah. So we're setting that all in advance. Everyone's getting their thoughts down on paper asynchronously. And then we're showing up. And what a cool consequence of that I didn't expect was that, yes, he's now more prepared to come or not more prepared. He's just like more ready to come share his thoughts. But also other people on our leadership team were like, wow, actually, I'm like that too. I'm like that too. And then what's so cool is now these 1 hour meetings where we're like, we talk for 55 minutes and then we're like, oh my God, we have to make a decision. We've got 4 minutes. And then it's so rushed. And now we come in and we're like, okay, we have an hour. Everyone knows how we all think. Anyone have any final comments or like new ideas I want to add for like 15 minutes maybe? And then let's, what do we all think? What should we do? And then we spend the hour decision-making instead of putting out all the information and then trying to squeeze the decision into a really tight timeline. And this is just something that I honestly identify as a growing pain. When we were a smaller team, it was just quicker. So we could, we were 3 or 4 of us, we could just like quickly talk about it and then make a call. And now we're a bigger team. And so that quickly talk about it has turned into like 55 minutes and then we have 5 minutes to make a decision. And that works for me because the whole time while I'm talking, other people are talking, I'm already like thinking about what I think and making the decision. but I grossly underestimated that that other people do that too. Like, so it was just something like a very small nuance that came down to the value for him
Yep.
of thinking time,
Yep.
time. Like, whereas I value conversation. Like, if I have a big problem at the company, my first thought is like, who can I call to talk this through with? Whereas his would be like, I need to go into a quiet room or go for a walk in the woods and think about it. And so it's crazy. Like, we kind of knew this about each other for years, but we didn't have the words to describe it until we did this exercise together. And so for the onboarding piece, I think the way that I'm still workshopping this, honestly. So, but like, I'll do it live with you for a sec. But like, one of the things that I'm thinking about is doing more values work with people when they first join. So it's really just like, what are your values? If you don't know your value, I'm giving them work in advance of like, hey, this is what core values are. Here's a couple of examples. Here's like a YouTube video to watch or whatever. And then like, we want to talk to you about your values on the first day. We want to get to know you, and we're going to share our values too. And I'll model that first and say, okay, these are my values. These are the company values. These are my values. What are your values? And just that is so simple. And I think I think there's a lot of people in startups who are like, ugh, exercises, corporate exercises. This is terrible. Like, this doesn't work. And I used to be one of those people. But now I'm like, holy shit, this works.
Yeah.
If you just don't call it a framework or an exercise, you're just like, I'm going to do this thing with you. I think it sits differently. But what I like about it is that on the first day, I always try to take whoever we hire out to lunch, especially if they live locally. Or like our team will take them out, like someone's taking them out and we're spending real time together that has nothing to do with the work. And that the goal of that is to obviously make them feel welcome, give them like their first friends in the company, really break the ice. And I think sharing food is just like a great way to connect, but also to give us space and time to talk about all of the things that we wouldn't get to during a normal onboarding process. And what I've thought about that is like, we just need more time for that. We were just doing a lunch on the first day. And then we would say like, okay, these 4 people are the ones you should have coffee with this week because they're the ones like cross-functioning you're going to work with most or something. But now I'm rethinking that. I'm like, how can we make the whole maybe first week just like playing with your colleagues or something? And so like, not everyone necessarily has time to do that, but like how, because in a startup like ours, we get people and we're like, oh, thank God you're here. We have to start right now, you know? So now trying to bake out a little bit more buffer for like the getting to know each other piece. And it's not like, we're not going to like do trust falls or something like, but just genuinely having real time to get to know them. That's not within the confines of our office or the actual tasks at hand. I think those 2 things are like very, very top of mind. And what we do is before we bring people on, we send them like a big email just a couple days before they start with like, you know, come here on your first day, da, da, da. This is how you log in. And then we also do this like first month. It's almost like a reading list, but it's not reading only. It's like a couple of videos that we really like live and die by. Like Sir Ken Robinson did a talk 20 years ago for TED on how schools kill creativity.
Biggest talks of all time.
I know.
On TED,
it's like,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Incredible. Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, you got to watch that. You have to watch like the Steve Jobs, you know, Stanford address. There's just like a couple of things
nice.
And there's a few things to read. And I think in that process, I would love to get that from them. It's like, when they get that email, I'm like, also like, what are you reading now? What's your go-to? Like, and I would love to get that information to share with the rest of our team so that we're getting to know them just like they're getting to know us. I think we've done it a little bit more one way where like, we're like, this is who we are. Come join us. Not like a cult, but like, you know, instead of saying like, this is who we are. Who are you? Tell us like, what are you reading? What's your favorite dessert? Like we do a bit of that when they join, but to try to deepen that a little bit and say like, what's the content you live and die by? Everyone has like that book or that video or that movie that you watch that changed your life. And I want more of that from people when they join.
Yeah, well, I think doing that as well is that it enables them to understand the culture and what they're walking into, and is that aligned, right? For first and foremost, because often when a company goes through a cultural transformation, that's where the most turnover occurs, because all of a sudden, there's not alignment anymore, and that's okay. But first and foremost, there's alignment there, but then there's got to be 2-way alignment, right? And so understanding them, and this is the thing, when it comes to our behaviors, what we do on a day-to-day basis, that's largely shaped by our values and our belief systems. Our values and belief systems shape the thoughts that we have on a day-to-day basis. choices, which then determine the actions, which then determine the results. And so with that, if we can get clearer on the beliefs and the values and how people go about making decisions, then that's a really good thing. And so I wonder, I'm really looking forward to hearing how it goes as you get to know them, because it's the thing that I mentioned earlier that we do on stage of, okay, what's one word that's you at your best? Often that's one of their top values.
Yes,
right.
of course.
So it's going to be one of their top values. So there's like, when it comes up on the screen, it's like, confidence or inspiration or courage or creative or curious, these pieces. And so being able to drill down on why that's important to them.
Yeah.
And how long has it been? Has it always been your value? And just these curious questions of exploring as to, because someone can have this often happens within the private work that I do. Someone can have the most amazing value in the world on paper, but it can be wrecking their life still. Somebody could value trust, for example, and the reason they value trust is because they got taken advantage of as a child or in a business deal. And now the reason they value trust so much is because they deep down believe that people can't be trusted. And so they value it so much they keep it front and center so that they don't get hurt. It's to keep them safe. Right. And that's a dysfunctional value system. It's not going to enable them to get the result they want or enable them to be able to trust folks and to be able to engage in great conversation. And so when it comes to like those values, like really exploring and deep diving down, same with the beliefs. Like one of the things I think could work there could be something like, okay, like what are some of the things that you believe about the world or about yourself or about others that have really enabled you to achieve some great things?
I love that. We ask a question. I always ask in people's interviews one question. I'm like, what is a hill you'll die on? What is a belief you have that maybe the rest of the world doesn't agree with, or they do? But like, what's that thing that you could talk about for 2 hours nonstop? And that like, and I think that the key is like, there's that, all of the, everything that you're saying, I totally agree with. I think the key is to bake that into the before you hire them stage.
Oh yeah.
Because like you don't want to spend all of your time bringing them in and then for everyone to be like, wait, this is not the right fit.
Yeah,
so like, sure. I think our interview processes are like, the standard interview process has not changed probably for a very, very long time. And you've heard like, there's always like these new quirky things that people are doing. But I think ultimately, like the thing I care most about is like, are we in a world together? Do your values align with ours? And if not, like, I want to know early. And so I think we have to try to make interviews a safer place to unpack some of that. I think it's always hard to do in the first one.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to do that before you waste anyone's time or your own, because you'll never know for sure until they're probably baked into the team. But I think being really aware of who people are outside of their LinkedIn and whatever is just like, it should be a no-brainer, in my opinion.
Well, I'm going to give a personal example here.
Yeah.
And it's completely separate from work. It's with my beautiful wife, Brittany, who's over to the side here. From when we first met to when we got married was 132 days. That's it. 132 days. And for some folks, that might seem, it's really, really soon. The amount of questions that we asked one another, the amount of different scenarios that we were in within that very, very, very short amount of time, which was seen to other people, we were able to get to know each other at such a deep level. And we said on multiple occasions, like within that 132 days, we got to know each other at a deeper level than many people would in multiple years of being together, because we were so incredibly intentional about understanding those pieces that we knew we both wanted to experience on either side. And one of the ways that I approached this for myself personally was enabling her to show up how she was versus how I thought she needed to be or how I thought she could be in the future. Because I made that mistake in previous women that I dated, previous to meeting, even up to the last woman that I was dating before meeting Brittany, is that believing they were something, but rather than just allowing them to show who they actually are, and putting, and not putting tests in necessarily, but like, different scenarios. Like 2 months in, she came back to Australia. It's like, here's the kids, here's the nieces and nephews. Let's see how you go, right? And she passed with flying colors. And it's a huge part of my life is being an uncle and to these young kids back home. And it's a huge part of my life going back there each year. And so her being able to interact and again, pass with flying colors, which she did. Absolutely. It was, I asked her to marry me while we were back there the first time we went back. Right. So, there were examples, so it enabled us to show up. And so like those questions but doing that beforehand. Now we've gotten to know each other at a deeper level. There's many things, but we increase the odds that we've both made the right decision. And we continue to. We have a thing called the weekly pulse, where every single week we have 4 questions that we ask each other that enable us to grow closer together, right? Where did you feel loved, appreciated, taken care of over the last week? Where did I make your life more difficult, more challenging? Where did I piss you off? Where did you get triggered? Then the third one, okay, based on that, what are we going to do about that? How can we respond? What can we do differently? And then the final piece of, okay, what is there any support that we need externally, whether it's in the form of a book or a video or therapy or anything like that. And by doing that over and over again, it's enabled us to continue to get to know each other. It's enabled us to continue to deepen our understanding of one another. Yeah. And in this case, how can we love each other even more? How can we show up for each other even more? And that, I would say, that's what you're doing in this environment and with the onboarding process. Yes, doing it in the hiring process, but it's also then extending that beyond, so that then you're not getting 5 years into the future going, I didn't even know that about you, right?
Yeah.
Because there's such beautiful insight that you have about the one example from a co-founder standpoint. And this is where I wonder as well, in that onboarding process, do you have the question of, and maybe this is in the initial, hiring process of, tell me about how you make decisions. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about when you've made some of your best decisions.
Yeah.
How'd you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the difference is when you start a company with people, there's a million ways to do it, right? And for us, we were like, oh, we have this idea, like, let's start working on it. And we just started working on it. And there was no like, we got to know each other. My co-founders live in Belgium. I flew there. We spent time together. Like they would come to Canada. Like we did a lot of stuff together, but we never really sat down and we're like, we, over the years we have in many formats, but never in such a formal way. Cause we weren't like interviewing each other. It was just such a natural coming together. And that's why I think there was, those things can come forward. But I also think like, not too dissimilar from you and Brittany. Like when I met my husband, we were like living abroad. We did a lot of traveling. We were in this international relationship. So we had to have conversations in like month 3 that I think most couples have at like year 5. Yeah. So it like expedited our relationship. And it all just comes down to the communication. Some people are just not good communicators or not comfortable communicators. And when you sit down and ask someone, hey, like, what was the last decision you made and how do you make it? I think some people are like, oh, I don't know. Like, and that's also very telling, right? And it comes down to also like why we ask folks in interviews often, or like we'll give people assignments to do. And then we'll always find, I'm like giving away our secret, but it's not a big secret, but like we'll always try to find one thing to give them constructive feedback on, even if they did an 11 out of 10 job, just to see like, how do you react to that? And some people are like, very defensive, very aggressive. They're like, nope, this is how it's done. Even if we are wrong, almost. Sometimes we'll do that as a test too. Like we know that they're right. And we'll say like, we'll actually think about it like this. Like we don't fully agree with what you're doing. And it's interesting to just see like how people handle that kind of situation with a potential future, employer. And I think it's a great way to test like temper and temperament. And there's no real, obviously people don't want to work with someone very aggressive or defensive, but I think it's an important way to see, like, will people just agree with you also, which is also horrible. Like if we say, yeah, like we fundamentally disagree with you. And they're like, you know what, like they just like roll over completely or they fight you tooth and nail and like, where's the middle? So I think it's a little bit of a test, obviously, but also I think it's not that one of their responses is right or wrong. Maybe I want someone who's going to just roll over. For some roles, maybe I just want that. Maybe I want someone who's always going to fight back or maybe I want someone more centered in the middle there. And so, Yeah, I feel like it's always interesting to put people in interesting situations.
Actual situations,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because anyone can, I mean, especially today, AI is going to write your resume, for example.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
people that can lie on the resume, do insert. We watched just yesterday, we watched The Internship, the movie. And,
Oh my God, yeah.
and they lied completely on their resume.
Totally.
They ended up getting the job, but it's a classic movie. And but yeah, and people can easily do that these days. And you put them in a real world situation. There was one, this many years ago in an organization I was in, and we're going through the hiring process of hiring some folks for a specific role. And it was a group interview. And so they were in the room together around a table, and we had them. There was one exercise which was I'm trying to remember whether it was there was a number of candies, all right, and one of the candies was heavier, metaphorically heavier than the others, and you had imaginary scales. You've got I think it was 3 times you could do different weights, and to work out which one is the one that's heaviest, and it was just let's see what they do, right? And we're watching for. Not so much can they solve the problem, but how do they go about solving the problem?
Totally.
And so we had this, there was one that I remember, and she said, "Oh, we can't be done." And like in our minds are going, well, that's probably not going to be a good fit, right? So immediately there was this is, kind of like this is a silly thing to do. There was one guy though, and we were hiring for a detailed role. Of someone who has to be able to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
Basically for a living, and he picked them up in his hands, like so the candy's there, and he's picking them up, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he used it, and there was a piece of paper there because we had different instruments that they could utilize. So he's writing down for a piece of moment, and we knew, like, we got to the end of the exercise, he didn't get it, but we just knew, okay, he's coming back. For another conversation at least, right?
Yeah.
And so we went through a number of different exercises. This is late in the week. He came back on the Monday. We said, invited him back in. He comes back in on the Monday. Guess what the first thing is that he
solved
said?
the problem.
He comes back in. The first thing that he says is, "I got it."
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And we'd forgotten about it. And he goes, "I worked it out." And he spent the weekend just going through it and working out the sort of.
I hope you hired him.
Gold. Yeah, we did totally. He was massively a good fit. And so that's a great example of that though, of putting people into situations that put them under pressure a little bit, because you're going to be under pressure in a work environment and a life environment that you're going to be required to behave in a certain way that's going to enable you to get a specific outcome. So if there's anything else for you to share there, please. Otherwise, I'd love to understand, how do we then build that into Pok Pok and what does that look like, and how are you bringing out the best in our kids?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. With Pok Pok, our goal is to give kids tools to play. It's so simple. We're not reinventing the wheel, really. In fact, when we started the company, we're like, why has no one else done this? This is so obvious to us. So Pok Pok is really about giving kids a space to go to where they can do anything they want and see what happens. Hard stop. So it's really about building in all of the stuff we've been talking about: friction, boredom, resilience, curiosity, imagination, and giving kids just like a place to do that. And so when kids open Pok Pok, they just see, we call them toys because they're very much toy-like versus a game, where usually, not always, but games tend to have outcomes, rules, goals. Toys often don't.
What's some examples of the toys then?
Yeah, so a couple of examples. So I don't know if you ever had this growing up, but one of those big rugs with cars and roads and buildings. And
Yep.
You could take cars and drive on them, or you could do whatever you want. So we've taken that concept and built it into our town, which is basically this open-ended town, but it's got everything from, cars and houses to the usual shops that you would see, to a movie set and an airport and a mountain and all of these things. And a lot of kids will go around and my son went through a 6-month phase where he was just recycling at the garbage dump, and that was the best thing for him. And he would just drive around the town, empty all the garbage cans, come back. But there's no right way to play. Some kids just actually line up all the cars in a rainbow on the street and leave them, and that's the play. Some kids are looking, sometimes a little fire will break out and you can go to the fire station and go put it out. And some kids look for those little moments. And our goal is not to say, okay, kids, there's a fire. How are you going to put it out? Yay, you put it out. It's just there's a little quiet fire happening off screen. Maybe you notice it, maybe you don't. If you notice it, do you want to put it out?
Mm.
Should you put like maybe not? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's all just there to spark little moments. For example, like the recycling center is just kind of always on and running quietly on the side. And like if you pan over to it, um, you'll see that there's like a garbage truck that's right there, and you could run it through and empty it out, and or you could just not. You could take the garbage and throw it on the street. Like, um, we have a sort of like a cooking house toy, and a lot of kids will, there's like lots of food and different things that you can make. And one of the favorites is like blending the chicken in the blender, which is just like a silly thing to do for an adult, but for a kid, you're like, oh shit, I can like blend a chicken. And then we've got a lot more sort of like tactile experiences. Like we have a marble run, which is one of our favorites and most popular, which is basically like your standard marble run, except because it's digital, we can really play around with gravity and physics in a way that you can't do in real life.
Mm.
So the marble run is quite extensive, and the older kids, maybe 6 to 7, are playing with it in a very complex way, whereas the 2 and 3-year-olds are just doing like small cause and effect things like opening up a tube and seeing which way the marble goes. We also have a sequencer, which you might like. It's for music. And you can make like sick beats, which is really cool. We also have lots of like sort of arts and crafts kind of experiences. We have, I think like that one of the top ones at the moment, and for the last year or so, has been a space toy, which was very cool. We worked with 2 female astronauts on that project to really try to build out a lot of space content for kids. Is very much like, these are the planets, here's the moon, like here's an alien. And we built out like the ISS. We built a lot of satellites. We built out spaces where kids can like run experiments in space while living in the station. And so we work with astronauts to really understand like, what is it like to live in space? What can we bake in for kids? And we put those astronauts into the toy. So if you happen to know who they are, they're just like small Easter eggs like that. We also worked with a New York City urban planner for the town to make it a very much a city that reflected today's world, but also gave a little nod into what might be coming in the future. So as a small example, and this was very innovative like 4 or 5 years ago when we launched, but before electric vehicles and self-driving cars had really like taken over, but our cars don't make any sounds. And this was a very intentional decision because like they might be electric cars, for example. And so, we baked in like bike paths and pedestrian zones and tried to build out a city that would be more in line with maybe what our kids are going to see in the future, but still feels like the comfort and coziness of today. And so we call it the playroom, just like, your house has a playroom, and we have about 22 toys in there at the moment. And it's sort of a mix of like tinkering, building, storytelling, arts, music. It's just as diverse as a regular playroom in your house would be. And so we're always trying to find ways to bring those kinds of tools into the space, so that because kids get sick of stuff really fast too. They go through these deep phases where they're like obsessed with one thing, and then suddenly they don't care about it. And so we've really tried to build in diversity. And because the toys, there's no winning or losing, there's no right way, there's no wrong, like there's no points. So you can grow with them. Like a 2-year-old might just live. We have a busy board. I'm sure a lot of families have these, especially with like a 1-year-old. There's like zippers and locks and buttons and stuff. And we built that in a digital space. And a lot of our 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds will just like, just button tap and hear a little sound and like see what happens. And like, that's interesting. When you get to 5, you realize like, oh, I can use 4 fingers at the same time. And this whole thing now is a totally different doodad or gadget. But when you were 3, you didn't even notice, but it was still a beautiful experience. And so we're trying to add a lot of like upskilling and layers to all of the experiences, so that if you're playing at 3 or you're playing at 6, you're learning and growing, and you're seeing some friction, which we think is obviously important because we've talked a lot about friction.
Yeah. What age does it go to then? And then is there views to extend that age, or are you going to stick within a specific age group?
Yeah, so the core users usually tap out between 6 and 7, but
Yeah.
we've designed it for kids up to age 8 because there are a lot of families whose kids have never used a device before.
Yeah.
And for them, the 8-year-olds will often still use it. But if if they have an older 9 or 10-year-old sibling who's playing Roblox, like we've usually lost them at that point because they just go do what their older sibling is doing.
Right.
And then similarly, we have a lot of neurodiverse users on the app, which is
Mm.
wonderful. And we very much designed it to be accessible for that community. And so the neurodiverse users also tend to stay with it longer, maybe up to age
Mm.
10 or so. But our sweet spot is really the like 2 to 5, 2 to 6. And we don't have any plans at the moment to age it up. We're very much obsessed with this like early
Yeah.
learning and early creative thinking, I would call it. And so for us, that is the sort of the priority.
Yeah. How have you specifically thought about from a neurodivergent standpoint and making sure that there's inclusivity there?
Great question. So one of the first consultants we brought on early days was a pediatric occupational therapist
Yep.
who specializes in sensory processing disorder. And this was one that was very personal to my co-founders, to myself, because most children's media content is very overstimulating by design. It's
Yeah.
to tap into the dopamine in our brains and to build addiction over time. And that makes a lot of money. Pok Pok is the opposite. We're like, how can we make this as least addictive as possible? Our number one KPI in the early days, and honestly still now, is like, can you take the device away from the child without them
Wow.
crying? And if we can't do that, it's too sticky, it's too addictive. And so what we worked with, her name is Laura Petit. She's wonderful. And she helped us really think about stimulation when it came to digital experiences and kids. So one of the things she taught us was that we never want the app to make sounds at kids. So Pok Pok doesn't sound like anything unless a child makes it make
Right.
noise.
Right.
And that was a big one. It's because like again, the control is in the child, not in the app. So there's nothing like coming at them. We also very intentionally from the beginning wanted to have a very minimal color palette because we found most kids' content was just like too bright and too loud visually. And so we only use 12 colors in the app, which we've now doubled to 24, but we only did it in a way where you've got like light red, dark red. So it's
Right.
the same
Right.
color,
Yeah.
but just we needed different tones. And so it's very visually, I don't want to say like underwhelming, but like it's like visually gentle on the eyes, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the sound effects are also very bespoke, very handmade. So we hired a sound designer very, very early, and almost every sound in Pok Pok is hand recorded. So it'll be like you might hear a person walking, but it's actually him like banging chopsticks on an apple or something like
Yeah.
in his house. So we did a lot of work on the sounds to make them feel like the same type of sound a wooden toy might make if you were playing, like a wooden xylophone or something. And so between the sound, the visual, and the way that those two things show up in the app, it's already a lower stimulation experience. And so that is really wonderful for our neurodiverse children, especially on the sensory side. So kids
Yeah.
who find bright lights or loud noises and things like that to be too much and very potentially triggering for their brains. We also know that because there's no instructions, there's no right or wrong way to play, and kids totally guide the way, that it leans into so many different learning styles. So my example of in the town, some kids go through looking for little problems to solve that we've sort of baked in, like a little fire might erupt and they could put it out. But a lot of kids actually play by like we've seen kids just find all of the birds and bring them over to one tree. That's the play for them.
Mm.
Or like I said, lining up the cars in like a rainbow because the cars are all different colors. Or like so the what is really unique there is that every child obviously plays very differently, especially as they grow. But for neurodiverse children, we really wanted to make sure that like all options were there. And that was hard because like we have to think like kids, right?
Right.
And that is not easy to do. And so we're always like, well, what if they did this? What if they might do that? What if they did this? How can we bake all of that in? And so between the openness of the play and then all of those auditory and visual details, we've tried to just make it very accessible and that it feels good to play with even without sound. We actually have a very wonderful kid who uses Pok Pok and he's deaf. And we've worked, actually his mom came on our podcast, Beth. His name is Coop. He's wonderful.
Mm.
And so we want to make sure that like Pok Pok still feels wonderful if you can't hear it, or
Yeah.
if you're on an airplane and you want to silence it because you don't want to like, bug other people. But Yeah, so there's just all those little like micro details that have gone into the design and the way it looks and feels and sounds that make it as yeah, accessible as possible.
Have you consulted with a range of kids in the
Yes,
design
oh my gosh.
process?
So many kids. We still do.
I'm
It's
sure you get
never-ending.
some crazy ideas. You've got probably them on a list somewhere,
Yeah.
and then the ones that. But I'm sure there's some gold in there as
Well, the
well.
best thing is like those kids don't lie. If they hate
Yeah.
it, they're like, fuck this.
Yes.
They don't say fuck this, but they're like, they just like push the iPad away and go do something else. So
Yeah.
we've done a ton of playtesting since the minute we started. My co-founders' kids, we started the company, we're like 1 and 2, 1 and 3. And so they were our very first early days testers. And then the pandemic started. And then we probably had like 20 playtesters when the pandemic started because we hadn't launched yet. And then all those testers were like, hey, my neighbors are all at home. I told them about Pok Pok. Can they be playtesters too? And then it exploded and we got so much support and help. And then we do a lot of stuff in our office as well. So we'll bring in kids live to play test of all ages, types, neurotypical, neurodiverse. And we're always playing because yeah, you can't it has to be fun.
Yeah.
And a kid is going to be the first one to show you when it's not fun. Because when you play test something with adults, like my brother runs a video game studio and when they play test with adults, there's that oh yeah, this is really great. But maybe you might want to think about people are almost afraid to disappoint. Whereas a 4-year-old's they'll literally just get up and walk away and go do something else.
Yeah.
And our playtesting room has other toys and which on purpose so that if Pok Pok's not, if it can't hold their attention for at least a couple of minutes, we're like, okay, so maybe this one, maybe they're not getting into it for some reason.
Yeah.
Also, we do design some toys that are a little bit more geared toward those older children, or a little bit more targeted toward the younger side. And so testing the ages and because no 2 4-year-olds are the same.
Yeah.
So we really want to make sure it works for as many kids as possible. And so yeah, that's the most fun thing that we do.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah.
They're so cute. They're all the best. And I mean, now I test on my own kids and my son is very vocal about what he likes.
What's good. So,
Yeah.
I love it. What about, so you mentioned that these other apps, devices, ways that they can utilize it are addictive. And they are. They're built in a way that is there to design to have them spend as much time as they possibly can on them.
Yeah.
So I guess, how do you go about thinking about, again, you're sharing about creating something that is not that. How are you battling with that?
It's hard, honestly, because again, I don't want to shame any parent who's putting that kind of content in front of their child because I think we're all just doing our best, honestly.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing so wrong with it to the point where your kid's going to be destroyed in their future because of it or anything. I think everyone's so black and white online about this stuff, but it's so nuanced. My kid watches Paw Patrol. There's no one way to raise your child, but for those families and for us who really feel strongly that it's not even about the addiction so much. It's just about what are they doing in it?
Yeah.
And it's naturally designed to be not addictive because of the type of play that it is. It's why a kid can much easier walk away from, just building a block tower, which is still not easy if you're really in the zone, versus in the middle of Monopoly. And you're I'm in the middle of Monopoly. I can't just get up. And so there's just things like that it's more just about what are the kids doing? What is it tapping into? Why are they playing with it? And there's a lot of merits to playing Monopoly. Don't get me wrong. Kids can learn a lot from Monopoly. It's awesome. It's competitive. It's, there's math. There's so many things. But what we're focusing on for this early age range is more of the block type play. And so when we think about it, it can get complicated when it comes to running a venture-backed startup at the same time, because I can't tell you how many calls I've had with investors over the years who are but wait, it's not really addictive. So how do you make any money? How do kids stay with it? And we have very strong retention. And I think it's because the motivation is intrinsic. So it's harder to get kids in at the beginning because it's definitely a gentler experience. And we ask more of them. We ask them to do it. We're not giving them something to just follow and latch onto. So it's harder to get your kid into it. We kind of lean on the parent a little bit to help prompt or be oh, I wonder what happens if you just start touching things and seeing. But if it's the child's first introduction to an iPad, for example, then they're sucked right in because
Really?
it's very exciting. but if they're used to playing something else, then they might need a little bit more of like a gentle nudge. But once they're in, they're very high retaining because the motivation is coming from them. So like, oh, but I just want to go like keep working on that cool thing that I was doing. But yeah, I mean, obviously from a business standpoint, it can be conflicting. I think that we've been very, very, very strict on our values there, and like we're not going to compromise on them. And I think that I know we can build a very profitable, healthy business that is like venture backable with those values in place. And I think this is what the world needs and wants. And yes, we're not maybe growing to the extent of some of our competitors who are using sort of like all the tricks in the book to grow, but we're doing it in a way that feels true to us, and we're still growing really well. So I think it's tricky. There's a lot of moments where I was like, oh God, like I'm not gonna be able to sleep at night if we do things any other way. But also like this is so much harder because the kid space is not when you enter because it's like easy and sexy. Like it's harder. We have more regulations. You can't, nor should we market to children. So you're talking to the parent, but they're not your user, they're your customer. There's like a lot of nuance there. So from a business standpoint, it can be sticky sometimes. And my job is very much mediating between like the how fast can we grow thing versus the like how can we keep changing children's lives thing. And that friction in our company has always been there. And I think it's a healthy friction for the most part, but it's not very black and white. And I think that at the end of the day, whenever we're torn in a decision, we look back to those values. And I just think too, like, what would I put this in front of my kids? And like one example is in Pok Pok, a kid can never click on something that's not available. So there's a lot of children's apps where they'll lock content behind a paywall. It's like free, but then you can see all the stuff, but you can't actually use it. And then they have to run up to their parent and be like, Mom,
this.
and like no parent wants that, no kid wants that. And so we might be able to make a bit more money doing that, but like we just ask for one payment up front. It's a subscription. We update the app all the time. But then your kid sees no bullshit, no ads, there's nothing they can't get into. It's so pure. You can genuinely leave them on the couch for 30 minutes and go make dinner without having to worry that they might accidentally buy something or like
I've heard those horror stories,
Yeah.
like thousands of dollars worth of gaps and stuff.
Yeah. So like it's not a simple thing, but it's just the way we've chosen to structure our company and run our business. And if we did it any other way, I don't think I'd want to work here.
Yeah. Have you been very selective or had to be very selective from a venture standpoint and who has actually backed it then and the investors and has what challenges have you come up against around that?
I mean, the usual like female founder nonsense, that's for sure. But then on the like addiction side, I think
what has been the female founder
No.
nonsense. Let's go.
Like,
let's touch on that for a moment.
As you probably know, women get almost no venture funding compared to men,
Right.
especially mothers. We're two female founders. My co-founders are husband and wife, but the husband is a little bit more like behind the scenes at this stage, but he's very much driving the company as well. But yeah, we're like the fundraising is like Esther and me. So it's women, it's moms right there in the room. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, we're underestimated all the time. I think it's just so much harder for women to raise money.
Why is it harder, do you think? What's going on there?
Because we're women. I think just because like this is how society has been running for the last several hundred, if not thousands of years. And
they believe you're incapable of doing it, or do you have an idea?
I think it's a couple things. I think it's like being underestimated in general.
Yep.
I think it's the rooms that you get in are just different. And my personal zone of genius is very much in connecting with people. And so for me, that's been a bit less of an obstacle. However, I'm usually, if not one of the only women in most rooms still, even in like the education kids world where you would think a lot of parents and women and mothers operate. It's also just a matter of opportunity. I think that men just float to the top where women float into the background. When it comes to negotiating, it's another one where I think we are grossly underestimated in terms of like what we're willing to go to bat for and how we negotiate deals. I raised our first round, or actually technically our second, our seed round. I was pregnant, very pregnant. We actually got the last check 4 days after my son was born. But the round had like essentially been finished other than that one check. But it was
It's
like,
a mic drop kind of moment of like, you know what, I'm just going to go into the fundraising room fully pregnant. And it's like, what you got, right? It's just like, let's go.
well, you know what's funny is like, I mean, this was 2022. It was all on Zoom. All
Okay,
of it.
gotcha. Yep.
And there was like a real part of me that was like, okay, as a woman, I want to do this for other women and like show my belly on Zoom and be like, I'm openly pregnant and not be ashamed. As a founder with a team and like a mission, I was like, I don't want to be super public about this because it will hold me back 100%. Because if you're going to give someone millions of dollars and then they're going to go have a baby, their first baby, which you don't even know how much it's going to change your life until you're in it, you're like, holy shit. So I was for the first several months, I was like pretty shy. I didn't say anything. I didn't volunteer that information ever. I was like tweeting about it back then a little bit and had like done a couple of posts. So any good investor who had the wherewithal to background check and like look at my socials would have seen like, oh, she's pregnant, but I didn't advertise it. And I think this is something that like I have to just live with now. But if I could go back and do it again, I probably would have been more open about it because I feel a little ashamed, honestly, that I didn't wear it like a badge of honor because I was too scared. I was like, it's already hard enough to be a woman. I don't want this to also get in the way of this company existing because my whole team is working their asses off. And we really believe in this project and mission and company. And I don't want my pregnancy to get in the way of that for all of these other people and for me and for the kids and like the world. But I was also like, I shouldn't be so shy about this. So if I could go back and do it again, I would be more vocal, but I might not have ever raised money. So that's something that I have to very much just live with now. And then when I raised our Series A, I was like actively miscarrying during part of that fundraise, which was awful. And then the thing is like, when you have kids, it's like, there's kind of like a schedule-ish where you're like, okay, you have one, a couple years later, you want another one. And that's like the same as the fundraising schedule. So I was just like caught in this like horrible loop of like, and so yeah, I remember fundraising. We had already locked in our lead and like the raise was going really well, but we had no women on the cap table for the Series A just yet. But we had a lot of interest and we're basically oversubscribed, but from only men. And then I was like, Esther, we cannot do this. Like if like we need women, always women in every round, or I'll never be able to just like live with myself. So we went to the lead and said, if you we want to take some cash out of this. We want to do a first close and we want to do another close, but with women or mostly women. And he was like 100% yes. And this guy is amazing. I love him. He's just a fantastic investor, but a wonderful person. He's a father. He gets what we're doing. He's never questioned.
Believes in it.
Yeah. He's never questioned the values or like the way we want to build the company. And when I asked him that and he said yes, without even hesitating, I was like, okay, we made the right call. And then it took that round raised really fast. We were doing really well, but it was a grind to get women in. And I was like, it took 2 months to fill a fraction of the round, which took like just a couple of weeks to fill like millions versus just like a few $100K, which was really hard but we did end up finding women.
Why do you think that was? Why did it take longer?
Oh, I mean, because women don't invest the way men do. Like, it's so rare to find there was a few problems. One is that once you hit a Series A level, valuation goes up, checks have to be bigger to make it make sense to bring you onto the cap table, which means you need more money to invest. So a lot of the funds who had women were the ones we were prioritizing. But then when it came to like who's actually making the call, who might sit on our board, it was never the woman. So we were like, okay, interesting, but not what we want. And then the angel investors or like the independently wealthy women were very interested, but couldn't afford to give us any more because they're women. And like for years have been like wildly undervalued and underpaid. And so a lot of the women who wanted to come in could only maybe afford $10,000 or $20,000, but we couldn't. Just like from a cap table standpoint, that made really no sense for us. So then we were like, how do we build like a vehicle and how do we get all these women in? And it was honestly like really out of control. And then we ended up finding a couple of women who could come in at larger check sizes, but it was really tough to find. In fact, one of the women, one of my mentors, she's our like fractional CFO and a very seasoned investor and invest in a lot of VCs and in private equity. And she was like, this is a problem I've seen my whole career. And she's like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm starting a fund. So she started a fund all filled with women just to invest in Pok Pok as the first investment. Now they're doing other investments,
Awesome.
investing in women. And so it was just a matter of like really spending time trying to find those people, but it was really hard to do. And it's another reason that I want Pok Pok to be successful so that I can go invest in more women.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a really powerful way. You're leading by example with that of, okay, it would have been easier to go down the other road and you made the decision, which is, again, very much in alignment from a values standpoint, which I really admire about what you've shared so far and how you're going about running things. So it sounds incredible. I wish you all the best with it. We have a rapid fire segment on the show now called Your Edge. 3 pieces: values, beliefs, and actions or habits. What's your number one value and why?
Optimism. My number one value is optimism because the world is hard. Life is hard. Building companies is hard. But if it's so important to me that we look at things with a glass half full attitude, because it's going to be hard whether you do or don't. But if you do it, it changes the way we show up. It changes the way you enter a room, a hard meeting, a difficult conversation with your partner, whatever it might be. It is so... I think it's like a life or death situation sometimes. And like some people think I'm a bit dramatic, but I truly believe if you enter the room with a positive outlook, you'll leave the room with a positive outlook. And I really need that in other people that I surround myself with. I don't flourish. I can't do my best work if I'm surrounded by negative energy, not from like so much of a woo standpoint, but just as a like, holy shit, the company's on fire. We have to solve this. And if everyone comes to the room like, fuck, we're screwed. We don't know what to like
Eeyore out of Winnie the Pooh, right?
I'm like, I can't. I'm like, no, I need to go solve this by myself because I need people to be like, this is really fucked up. This is really hard, but we're going to figure it out. Yeah. And to me, it's like, it's how I lead. It's how I hire. It's why I married my husband. It's like, it just matters so much to me. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a great one. So what's a belief that shaped who you become, whether it's a belief about yourself, about others, or about the world? One of my number one beliefs about the world is that we are all like, the more open you are to opportunity, the more opportunity will come. It's sort of what we were talking about before we started recording, which is this idea that like, if you go out into the world and are open and have your eyes up and pay attention, then good things will happen to you. And it might sound a bit naive or silly, but I really believe that like people are what make other people do wonderful things and give great opportunity. And I've had so many like weird serendipitous things happen in my life where I'm like, oh man, this is so crazy. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know what it is. Like you were saying, like, is it fate? Is it something else? But I really just believe that like, if you go out into the world, like looking for those moments, they will come to you at some point. Maybe not in the way you thought or wanted, but in the way that is hopefully right for you. So I'm very much a believer in like talking to the person on the airplane or like, being open to whatever. Yeah, you never know who you're having a conversation with. You never know with the experience that you're having, like what that's going to lead to. And yeah, I've had just so many examples of that as well. So what about a habit, routine, or ritual that you can't live without, whether it be and you can choose whether it's a daily habit right out to a family tradition for the year, for example, or both? Okay, I'll give both. So with work, one of my daily habits with work is like I have a little sticky note on my desk and it just is like it's all about the families, and I like look at it every day, and it's just a really important reminder that helps me zoom out and think about like why we're here, because it's so easy to get lost in like legal and finance and blah, 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 like so that really helps align me every morning. And then on a more personal note, my husband and I started doing this kind of like offsite thing where, I mean, it's hard now with kids, but we basically spend the whole day together and we do like a Q&A all day long. It's like a 10-hour process and it's asking a bunch of questions about our life and relationship. And like, we go really, really, really deep on a lot of things, and it takes all day. Yep. And then we kind of like rate our marriage out of 10 at the end and see like, how are we doing and where do we need to improve, or how are things going? And like, what are our goals? What do we want to spend money on this year? How do we want to shape our family and how do we want to raise our kids? How's our like personal life with our families and intimacy? Like we go through everything, and then, and we like have fun. We like do an activity, we eat, we walk and drive, and it's like a full day of just for us, which since having kids really, 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 really matters, especially when you have little ones. I don't know. It's just like such a shit show in our house at all times that we're like we're ships in the night.
Yeah.
And we also do that with like two of our very best friends every year. So we do it as a couple, and then we go and do it with them.
So they're doing it on their own, you're doing it, and then you come back together?
Yeah, we don't always do it in the right order. Sometimes we'll do it as a group first, and as a group we each take over and run a session, and it can be about anything. So we each facilitate a session. And my husband always plans something like really fun, more on the activity side. Like we'll go like bowling or do a dance class or whatever. And my friends are very like startup org, like personal growth people. So like similar to me. So then the three of us do more of the like, you know, those kinds of sessions. My favorite one was like, where should we all move to? That knowing that none of us were actually moving anywhere, but we each
So
did
good.
like, we each made decks and like keynotes about where we each picked a city and like argued for 10 minutes why we
So
should
good.
all uproot our lives and move there. Actually, Sydney was on the list
Oh, nice.
last year.
Yep.
And just fun. It's just like cool things that help you think about and like reflect on the last year and what you want to do, and as friends, but also as individuals. And it's just like we just do like a little annual friend offsite now, and it's really fun.
So good. So it's once a year.
Yes.
And then is certain parts, are they the same questions, or does it mix completely up every single year?
We mix it up. There
Mix
are
it
no
up,
rules.
yeah.
The only rule is there are no rules.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
really don't get too bogged down in the process. It's really all about we don't get bogged down in the process, but we just want to make sure like this space happens, and that when my husband Nick and I do it together, it's very ad hoc. It's like we're in the car and like whoever's not driving is the one like prompting, and then we'll
Right.
switch, and like it's very loose. And with our friends, it's a bit more structured, but we try to make sure that we all know what the other one is doing so we don't have an overlap. But like one year we went to a bookstore and had all these like weird parameters, and then we had to find books for somebody else, and we had only like 5 minutes to do it. And then everyone left with a book, and two of us bought books that the other two had already read. It was like very crazy serendipity things, but like we just try to get creative, and every year should be different.
So good. So good. I love amazing. Great stuff. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks
It's
for
been
coming
really
in. Where can people go to find out more about Pok Pok, connect with you?
Totally. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Melissa Cash like money. And then Pok Pok is everywhere at Play Pok Pok. And Pok Pok is spelled POK. And I think we're most active really on Instagram, but we're everywhere.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a real
Thanks.
pleasure.
This is so fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And for those of you listening, we will have everything mentioned in the show notes linked at cameronatlas.com/podcast. We've got some great new guests coming up, so make sure you hit that follow button, leave a comment, and until next time, go and write the next line in your story. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode here on The Edge of Possible.